Chapter Volume 110. Unusual Tez. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Lin Shi pushed aside the thick curtains, entering the tent the 7 Academy elders were in. The first scene he saw immediately left him greatly surprised. On a half-person tall rosewood long table all types of different items were arranged. There were all types of refined metals, sheepskin scrolls, some strange-looking plants, dried grass, even silver containers of all different shapes and colors. There were also all types of bladed weapons, these bladed weapons including short blades, among them including spears, swords, assassin needle-like weapons, as well as a bow and arrows. However, the most terrifying thing was that the transparent containers all had internal organs and eyeballs soaked within. The dozen or so transparent vessels of varying sizes carrying dark red medicinal liquid had all types of internal organs and swelling eyeballs of different sizes inside of them, making them look extremely terrifying. Seated behind these containers was actually an amiable-looking middle-aged large woman, her friendly appearance and these transparent vessels forming a strong contrast. Next to the large middle-aged woman was a brown-eyed elder with a great ash-gray beard. His face was expressionless, looking extremely serious. Next to the ash-gray bearded elder was a tall and heroic-looking male. His hair was pitch black, held together by an old-fashioned hairpin, his appearance immediately making Lin Shi think of Chris Phillips who sang "Winter Fire." However, what made Lin Shi feel rather strange was that the age of this handsome and tall black-haired man seemed to be a mystery. This tall and handsome man's outer appearance looked to be extremely young, but Lin Shi instead just felt that based on intuition, this black-haired man's age was quite great. Moreover, this black-haired man's eyes were cold, vacant, making one associate them with two pitch-black tunnels. The moment this black-haired man and Lin Shi's eyes met, Lin Shi's eyes unexpectedly felt a slight stinging pain. BL.net. When he subconsciously turned his head around to avoid this black-haired man's gaze, he saw the single-armed elder who sat in the corner of the room, as if he was just a visitor. He also noticed that this single-armed elder, despite also wearing an identical academy black robe, his chest and cuffs had a unique Qilin and Mandarin duck markings. "You're Lin Shi. Have you cultivated soul force before?" At this time, before Lin Shi had time to size up the remaining 3 individuals, the examination already began. The one who spoke first was precisely the indescribably grave and stern black-haired male. His voice was only a bit louder than a whisper, moreover, he didn't seem to wish to waste any time. While speaking, he pointed at the various bladed weapons before him with a serious expression. "Come up and take a look at these weapons, which one do you feel is the most fitting?" "I am Lin Shi, have never cultivated soul force before." Lin Shi composed himself, also no longer sizing up the other academy elders. He took a few steps forward, arriving in front of the long table, starting to seriously examine the weapons in front of this black-haired man. The academy was quite peculiar, especially that legendary academy principal who gave him an odd feeling. Together with his gamble with that golden spoon youngster, Lin Shi, who originally only planned to give the outside world a look, already set the resolution to enter Green One Academy. These are all soul weapons, this was the first thought that appeared in Lin Shi's mind. Just like Zhang Ping's dagger, these 10 or so bladed weapons, including the black longbow, were made of a type of black refined metal, a layer of strange patterns engraved on their surface. "Hurry up, pick one now," the black-haired man suddenly said. Lin Shi's brows jumped, immediately choosing the sword in the pile of weapons. This sword was 6 feet long, the blade extremely thin, practically only a few bamboo leaves in thickness, but the feeling it gave off was instead extremely tough and durable. Apart from those strange patterns, the sword also had layers of cloud patterns, fine and dense. The black-haired man nodded in a grave and stern manner. "All right, lower the sword." Lin Shi lowered the sword he had just picked up in confusion. This sword's weight wasn't all that heavy, only 10 or so jin. "Give these objects a look, as well as the lines on these scrolls." How do you think these objects match up to the lines on those small scrolls? Match them up the way you think they should be matched together. At this time, someone suddenly spoke up, voice hoarse, but similarly stern. Lin Shi immediately turned his head. The one who spoke was one of the three he hadn't had time to examine yet. This was a black-robed old woman, ash-gray hair messy, the tips of her hair all a dried yellow. Her figure was small and shriveled, face covered in wrinkles, small triangle eyes slightly caved in, skin also a bit sallow. The most crucial part was that her fingernails were a bit dark. The first feeling she gave Lin Shi was that of an old witch. The objects she was talking about were 4 pieces of refined metal and 4 small unfolded sheepskin scrolls. The 4 pieces of refined metal were all square dot-shaped, half a fist in size. 2 pieces were black, 1 pure golden, and 1 was silver. The lines drawn on the 4 small unfolded sheepskin scrolls were entirely different as well, among them 2 that were like twisting vines, 1 that was like a phoenix's tail, and 1 that was like water ripples. These should be the patterns used to create soul weapons, each type of refined metal having their own most suitable patterns, right? Does Elder wish to see if I have this type of sense, want me to pick the most suitable patterns for these materials? After muttering to himself for a bit, Lin Shi didn't immediately try to match them, instead first looking at this old witch-like black-robed woman, seriously asking this. The black-robed woman frowned slightly, seemingly annoyed, but the eyes with which she looked at Lin Shi with had a bit more of a peculiar feeling. You're correct. Specific runes are to be matched with specific refined metals, only then can soul weapons be created. Runes, this kind of term is also the same as what I'm used to. Only, I wonder if this was what they were called originally, or if it is something Principal Zhang changed. A ruminate look appeared on Lin Shi's lips as well, thinking this inwardly. Before anyone could tell him off for speaking nonsense, he immediately looked at the black-robed old woman and said, this should also be a form of talent examination. If I am completely wrong, can you tell me the correct answer? I came from Deerwood Town, rushing here for an entire month. Even if I fail, I'll at least have learned a few things from your respected self, so it won't be too great of a regret. Fine. The black-robed old woman gave Lin Shi a look, nodding. I'll tell you the best answer. Now, hurry and begin. Lin Shi revealed a warm smile. This black-robed woman's character clearly wasn't as frightening as what she looked like on the outside. He didn't hesitate either, directly placing the 2 small sheepskin scrolls with the twisting vine runes with the 2 black square pieces of refined metal, and then placed the phoenix tail-shaped rune small scroll by the pure golden piece of refined metal, the last ripple dot-shaped rune small sheepskin scroll by the silver refined metal chunk. Complete nonsense, just causing trouble. The black-robed old woman immediately rebuked angrily. Originally, she seemed to have developed a better impression of Lin Shi, but Lin Shi's actions left her greatly dissatisfied. This is Blackwater Gold, only compatible with the Water Cloud rune. This is Black King Iron, it has to be matched with Golden Phoenix runes. Golden Steel goes with Evergreen runes, Bright Silver Gold with Ancient Vine runes. She pointed out the correct answers one by one, and then looked angrily at Lin Shi. Even if you were blind, you should have been able to match 1 or 2. Yet who would have thought you would actually get them all wrong? Seems like you don't even have a hint of talent, not suited for the natural arts. I didn't even get 1 right. Lin Shi scratched his head in an embarrassing manner. This really was a bit too lacking. Without waiting for him to produce any other response, the middle-aged bigger married woman seated before the pile of transparent vessels and some plants spoke up. Look this way. Have you gotten a proper look? The moment Lin Shi's eyes shifted in her direction, this kind-faced middle-aged bigger married woman reached out her hand, and then with a quick movement, a great white cloth covered all of those bottles, plants, and dried herbs. Tell me, apart from those bottles, how many stalks of medicinal herbs are there, what their distinguishable features are, which positions were they in on my table? Then, this middle-aged bigger woman asked Lin Shi. Lin Shi was stunned. This was testing his memory. Just now, his attention was completely focused on this middle-aged bigger woman and those bottles. Towards those medicinal herbs arranged on the table, he really didn't pay them that much attention. After staring blankly for a moment, Lin Shi decided he might as well just shake his head and say, I don't remember a single one. The middle-aged married woman's expression changed slightly, wanting to open her mouth and say something, but then she hesitated. After taking a deep breath, in the end, she still decided not to say anything, also just inwardly shaking her head in disappointment. In reality, in the beginning, Lin Shi's performance left her somewhat satisfied. Of the many examinees that entered before him, only Lin Shi seemed the most unflustered before those internal organs and eyeballs she purposely brought out. However, Lin Shi's performance now left her extremely disappointed. An aged voice sounded. Only a single one of these 5 eggs is alive, can be bred. See if you can pick it out. The one who spoke out was one of the remaining 2 academy elders Lin Shi didn't get a good look at. This was a wizened elder with braided hair, his figure small and short, face full of wrinkles. However, the braided hair was golden, completely spotless, full of radiance. Before him were 5 eggs of varying sizes, the largest one the size of an ostrich egg, its shell black. The smallest one was only the size of a sparrow egg, ash brown in color. It seems like you are in charge of carrying out the spiritual sacrifice department's test. Lin Shi revealed a sincere smile. If I get it wrong, could your respected self tell me the correct answer? The golden-haired wizened elder gave Lin Shi a look. He didn't waste any time, only nodding. I guess this one. Lin Shi pointed at a red-shelled chicken egg-like egg. The wizened elder gave Lin Shi an expressionless look. That egg is an ordinary chicken egg, already fully cooked, the only one that has been boiled thoroughly. Cough cough, under this extremely serious atmosphere, when they heard this wizened elder's words, only one person didn't release a single laugh. The only one who didn't laugh was the rigid-looking middle-aged man in the gray-colored leather hat who hadn't uttered a single word yet. He had a rectangular face, complexion pale, his expression inflexible the entire time. You can actually still laugh about it. The wizened elder gave Lin Shi, who couldn't help but laugh, a look, disappointingly shaking his head and saying, the largest egg is the living egg that can be bred. Chapter Volume 111. Who under the heavens doesn't know the ruler? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Behind the long rosewood table, of the 6 academy elders, the elder with the ash-colored beard and the rigid-looking middle-aged man with the gray leather hat exchanged a look, nodding towards each other. Next person. Then, the elder with the ash-colored beard looked at Lin Shi, pointed at the other opening of the tent and released a shout. Lin Shi opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but after thinking about it for a bit, he seemed to have thought of something, quickly walking towards that exit. The exit led to open tents, these tents most likely here to prevent the test's contents from leaking out. Everyone who already finished their exam were waiting there. With just a single look, Lin Shi saw Zhang Ping, who was sitting in the left corner. Zhang Ping's face had a dispirited and absent-minded appearance, looking like he didn't do that well. Ignoring the others' looks, Lin Shi directly walked up to Zhang Ping and quickly asked, Zhang Ping, what was your test like? Was it also those pieces of refined metal with the runes, choosing a weapon, memorizing those medicinal herbs, and finding out which egg was alive? Yeah. Zhang Ping looked at Lin Shi with a pale expression. My test went really badly. From what the lecturer said, I only matched a single pair of the 4 correctly. Even if I can enter the academy, I don't think I can enter natural arts. Lin Shi nodded. He frowned slightly, and then said a single word. Return. The scenery suddenly changed. Lin Shi, do you really have that much confidence in entering the academy, moreover with better results than him? Lin Shi and Zhang Ping were no longer in that post-exam tent, but rather in the tent before seeing those lecturers. Next to Zhang Ping was Meng Bai, the two of them currently looking at Lin Shi with doubtful looks, asking quietly. That golden spoon youngster was currently looking at Lin Shi with disdain, sneering. Relax, I won't lose unless I want to lose on purpose. Lin Shi had a faint smile on his face, I'll win for sure. Lin Shi, this is no joke. Right at this time, the black-robed middle-aged lecturer shouted with a serious voice, Zhang Ping. Zhang Ping immediately subconsciously bounced up from the ground. Wait. Lin Shi grabbed this extremely nervous youngster. He patted his shoulder, said good luck, and then also whispered by his ears, Zhang Ping, didn't you say you want to enter the natural arts department? I remember I saw some recordings, saying that Blackwater gold needs to be matched with water cloud runes, Black King iron goes with golden phoenix runes, golden steel with evergreen runes, bright silver gold with ancient vine runes. I don't know if it'll be useful for you or not. Zhang Ping stared blankly for a bit, clearly not understanding why Lin Shi would suddenly tell him these things at this time. However, at this time, he didn't have any time to ask anything else. He gave Lin Shi a look, nodded, and then quickly entered the tent behind the black-robed lecturer. It's coming. Soon afterwards, Lin Shi laughed. At the same time, that black-robed middle-aged lecturer with the strict expression shouted, Lin Shi. Lin Shi entered the large tent where the 6 academy elders were again. The 6 academy elders and the single-armed elder who was listening from the side all immediately felt a bit shocked at this time. No matter which youngster it was, when they saw this type of serious setup and those internal organs, eyeballs, and other things, they would all reveal a bit of shock, but the expression on Lin Shi's face was instead extremely calm, not all that affected. Just from this alone, the black-haired man and the middle-aged married woman already had favorable impressions. You're Lin Shi. Have you cultivated soul force before? It was still that grave and stern black-haired male who spoke. Come up and take a look at these weapons, which one do you feel is the most fitting? I am Lin Shi, have never cultivated soul force before. Lin Shi didn't show much hesitation, walking up. He directly fetched that thin and sharp long sword. All right, lower that sword. The grave and stern man nodded. The black-robed witch-like old woman then spoke out, give these objects a look, as well as the lines on these scrolls. How do you think these objects match up to the lines on those small scrolls? Match them up the way you think they should be matched together. Lin Shi nodded in respect, and then walked up. It was still those 4 pieces of refined metal, as well as 4 small sheepskin scrolls. In a calm and unhurried manner, he placed the small sheepskin scroll with the phoenix tail-shaped runes by a piece of black refined metal, placed the withered vine-shaped rune sheepskin scroll by the silver refined metal, the sheepskin scroll with the flowing cloud runes by the other black refined steel. Finally, the long green leaf vine-shaped runes were placed by that golden refined metal. When Lin Shi lowered the 3rd small sheepskin scroll, the black-robed old woman's eyes already revealed a different color. This place actually became a bit silent. Look my way. The middle-aged married woman's voice finally sounded. Have you gotten a proper look? The middle-aged married woman gave Lin Shi a look. She reached out her hands, and then with a quick movement, a great white cloth covered all of those bottles, plants, and dried herbs. Tell me, apart from those bottles, how many stalks of medicinal herbs are there, what their distinguishable features are, which positions were they in on my table? This middle-aged married woman looked at Lin Shi and said. There are a total of 15 stalks of medicine, 5 of them are grown inside the vessels, living, 10 of them are dried, the leftmost stalk is a yellow dried medicinal herb, 1 foot in length, the very top has 3 small black fruits. Then, next to it is a stalk of living herb, planted in a celadone pot, a bit similar to a rose, the flower purple-colored, stem full of small pricks. Not only the middle-aged larger woman, even that old-fashioned middle-aged man who wore the gray leather hat revealed a bit of a stunned expression. Lin Shi was still continuing. The middle-aged larger married woman's eyes were already filled with emotions and even a look of zealotry. She suddenly interrupted Lin Shi, saying with an extremely serious voice, "You memorized these medicinal herbs deliberately right from the start. Otherwise, no matter how good your memory is, there is no way you could have remembered them so clearly in such a short time without any errors." Lin Shi was a bit shocked. He knew that his performance was too great, instead incurring the middle-aged woman's suspicions, but he wasn't flustered, only calmly replying, "That is not entirely the case, it is only that those internal organs, eyeballs, and other objects were a bit frightening, so they immediately drew my attention. Then, I saw those medicinal herbs were rather interesting, never seen them before, so I gave them a few extra looks, thus remembering them clearly." "Which medicinal herb do you feel is more interesting?" The middle-aged larger married woman took a deep breath. She gave Lin Shi a look, her voice even changing slightly. Before Lin Shi replied, an aged voice suddenly sounded, "Only a single one of these 5 eggs is alive, can be bred. See if you can pick it out." When he recalled the words this elder with the serious and wizened expression spoke before, Lin Shi couldn't help but laugh slightly. "What are you laughing at?" The wizened elder's brows shriveled together. Everyone's eyes were like torches, all of them staring at Lin Shi. "It's nothing." Lin Shi laughed with an innocent expression. He pointed at the red-shelled egg among the 5. "I just felt like this egg is like an ordinary chicken egg, and it is one that has already been cooked through. I was wondering if your respected self just randomly grabbed an egg that was prepared for breakfast here, which is why the wizened elder's eyes immediately widened, sucking in a cold breath of air. "You really feel like this egg is an already cooked chicken egg?" "Yes." Lin Shi nodded, a smile hanging from the corners of his lips. The wizened elder took another deep breath, looking at Lin Shi with an extremely serious expression. "Then which one do you feel like is living, can be incubated?" "If I had to guess," Lin Shi nodded towards the largest egg, "then I'll choose that one." The wizened elder swallowed. He looked at Lin Shi. Very good, let me ask you a question." At this time, the rigid-looking middle-aged man adjusted his hat, looking at Lin Shi and began to ask his question. Lin Shi immediately became nervous, because this rigid-looking middle-aged man didn't ask him any questions before. "From when you first walked into this tent to when I asked you this question, how much time do you think passed in total? During this amount of time, roughly how many times has your heart beat?" The rigid-looking middle-aged man asked Lin Shi without moving in the slightest. Lin Shi suddenly released a breath of relief, because his fists that had clenched from momentary nervousness also loosened. When he entered this world, he hadn't learned too much about other things, but time. In this world, there might not be many people who can calculate it more clearly than him. Moreover, before, he even carefully calculated everything, so this could be said to be his strongest suit. This world's 1 breath was called 1 second in his previous world. The 1 minute from his past word is equivalent to this world's 1 halt. From when he first walked into this tent until now, 3 minutes and 40-something seconds had passed, while his heartbeat was roughly 60 to 65 a minute. From the start until now, I feel like 3 halts and 40-something breaths of time had passed. My heart has beat a total of 220-something times. Lin Shi calmly replied. The rigid-looking man also took a deep breath, his eyelids dropping, no longer saying anything. "Let me test your literary talents a bit." The elder with the ash-colored beard woke up, hurriedly asking, "Finish a poem for me. The first half is, do not worry about the road ahead while ignoring the self. Lin Shi stared blankly, his body trembling slightly. It wasn't that he didn't learn about this before, but rather that this poem was just too familiar to him. It isn't easy, it is fine if you cannot answer it as well." The middle-aged large woman and the others looked at each other, seeing this type of intention from the other side's eyes. This was especially the case with that middle-aged larger woman who already wanted to speak out in consolation. Have Lin Shi quickly stepped down to wait for his examination results. However, what none of them expected was that Lin Shi, who seemed like he couldn't answer, instead suddenly slowly said, "Who under the heavens doesn't know the Lord? Do not worry about the road ahead while ignoring the self. Who under the heavens doesn't know the ruler?" The elder with the ash-colored beard suddenly stood up. Even the face of the single-armed elder listening from the side revealed a clear expression of being moved, his lips trembling slightly, as if he was reciting this poem. Who under the heavens doesn't know the ruler? Excellent breadth of spirit. Only after the elder with the ash-colored beard stood up for a moment did he completely snap back to reality, shouting as if no one was here. You can go on. The middle-aged larger married woman looked at Lin Shi, nodding her head in a meaningful manner. 1. I only did a rough literal translation here, but the meaning is something along the lines of do not worry about not having intimate friends with you from today on. There is no one in this world who doesn't recognize you, the ruler, all of them willing to become your friend. Chapter Volume 112. Upright Swordsman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Lin Shi left the tent, this middle-aged larger married woman gave the others a look, resolutely and decisively saying, "Our medicine department wants this Lin Shi. Professor Lan, it isn't only your medicine department that lacks geniuses." The black-robed, witch-like old woman whose hair tips were golden retorted, "It's not like you didn't see for yourself that he has an innate talent for the natural arts." The wizened elder with the golden hair gave these two a look, his voice unprecedentedly clear and resolute. "The two of you should still leave him to my spiritual sacrifice department. Our spiritual sacrifice department's members really are too few. If this continues, Yunqin Empire's priests might become fewer and fewer." When they heard this skinny and shriveled elder's words, the large middle-aged married woman and the black-robed old woman first stared blankly, but then the rigid middle-aged man spoke up, pausing with each word, "If we are to talk about a need due to scarcity, then it will obviously be our internal study department." The black-haired male with the most grave and stern expression also suddenly spoke up, simple and direct. "Our self-defense department also wants this person. Professor Qin, are you really going there?" When this black-haired male spoke, the middle-aged larger woman and black-robed woman really couldn't take it any longer, furiously shouting, "Lin Shi's aptitude is only second level, what are you trying to fight over him for?" When faced with these two's anger, the black-haired man's expression was still stern and calm, speaking in an unperturbed voice, "Professor Lan, do not forget that he is just an ordinary youngster from Deerwood Town, yet when facing those bloody and terrifying articles you purposely placed there, he instead remained inherently cool-headed. Moreover, everyone has seen how calm he was throughout this entire examination process, not a trace of nervousness or mistake. Moreover, I had him choose a weapon, yet he didn't have any hesitation, cool-headed, decisive, excellent memory. Furthermore, swordsmen are normally upright, their hearts honest, together with his own aptitude not being too shocking. This is the most optimal candidate for becoming an undercover spy in our self-defense department." After pausing for a moment, the black-haired man calmly said, "Moreover, with his performance, I can guarantee that as long as he joins our self-defense department, even if his aptitude is a bit lacking, even if he doesn't become an undercover spy, he should still have great accomplishments in the future." The large middle-aged married woman and the others who were familiar with this black-haired man's personality were all momentarily left with their mouths dry, unable to say anything. The entire tent entered a silence that was hard to break. "The one she recommended is indeed a bit different. Since this is the case, then let's just let the heavens choose. Let's not delay the examinations of the others. You all shouldn't be in a rush to fight over him either. Perhaps there might be students who aren't bad to come." The single-armed elder who watched quietly suddenly laughed, saying with a warm voice, "Yes." The 6 professors who clearly all wanted Lin Shi in their departments all felt that this was the best solution, all of them nodding. "Next." The black-haired man's strict voice quickly sounded. There shouldn't be any issues, right? Lin Shi walked into the room where those who had already completed their test were waiting inwardly thinking. He immediately saw Zhang Ping. Zhang Ping was still sitting in that corner, only, his face was slightly red, having a nervous and excited expression. Lin Shi, how did your test go? When he saw Lin Shi walk over, Zhang Ping immediately suppressed his voice, taking the initiative to ask. Lin Shi revealed a faint smile, saying, I think it went all right, should probably be able to enter the academy. You are that confident? Zhang Ping was shocked. He then looked around him, saying next to Lin Shi's ears, this time, it's all thanks to you. During that natural arts professor's test, there were two of them that seemed to be similar to what you said. Could it be that the refined metal and runes are changed each time? Lin Shi was surprised. He asked quietly, what refined metals were the 4 pieces that were brought out? Zhang Ping said quietly, 1 piece was black, 1 was silver, and 2 were bronze-colored refined metals. Lin Shi knew that he made a mistake in what he had planned, saying rather apologetically, it's a pity I only saw those recordings before, unable to help you too much. This is already quite the lucky coincidence. Zhang Ping found it hard to suppress his excitement. From what I saw, the natural arts professor's expression seemed to already be satisfied. Together with the fact that my aptitude isn't bad, I have a good chance of entering the natural arts department. If that is the case, then that's the best. Lin Shi pursed his lips slightly, when you took the test, did they have you choose a weapon, then match refined metal with runes, memorize medicinal herbs, and then guess which egg can be incubated? Zhang Ping nodded. It seems like this is how it was for everyone. Lin Shi was a bit dumbfounded. Isn't this a bit like playing games? Wouldn't this all depend on luck? Zhang Ping shook his head with a serious expression. The Academy's professors are all extremely capable individuals. What seems like games to us definitely carry deeper meaning for them, just that we cannot understand it. Lin Shi rubbed his head. Frantically memorizing those medicinal herbs just now indeed gave him a bit of a headache. At the same time, he nodded in half agreement, do you know why that black-haired man had me choose a weapon from the start? I do not. Zhang Ping looked at Lin Shi and said quietly, the one I chose was a pair of long needles. What did you pick? Lin Shi said, I chose the sword. After quietly chatting with each other, 2 more people walked out from the tent. Those lecturers were in one after the other. Meng Bai, Meng Ren is your grandfather. You actually still want to enter the medicine department. You, right at this time, suddenly, the large middle-aged married woman who looked the most amiable roared out in anger, voice extremely loud, sounding even through the heavy layers of curtains. Even those in the tent with Lin Shi and Zhang Ping could hear everything clearly. Lin Shi and Zhang Ping immediately looked at each other in dismay. Just from this sound alone, they could imagine just how furious the expression of that middle-aged woman was. A moment later, a pale-faced, as if scared stiff Meng Bai staggered out into Lin Shi and Zhang Ping's field of view. Just what is going on? Your grandfather and that medicine department professor have some kind of conflict. Lin Shi and Zhang Ping asked Meng Bai curiously, filled with curiosity. The 6 professors who sat upright behind the long table in that tent, as well as the one who watched from the side, the single-armed elder who seemed to have even higher status, all had extraordinary presences. Someone who could make someone lose themselves to such a degree definitely wasn't just a normal type of character. I don't know. Meng Bai gasped for breath, but his face was completely sullen. I only took the initiative to state that I was interested in the medicine department, and then she only gave my face a look, immediately screaming out in anger, based on normal reasoning, my grandfather's age should be much greater than hers, so there shouldn't be anything between them. She shouted your grandfather's name, and then from what you said, only gave your face a single look before immediately screaming in anger. It definitely has something to do with your grandfather. Lin Shi shook his head in disapproval, starting to analyze this. Is there a chance that because their cultivation levels are high, these professors' true ages are much greater than what they look like? This should be the case. Zhang Ping immediately nodded continuously. From what I heard, the professors in the academy are all old freaks with extremely great ages. The ones who are overseeing the exam should all be academy professors as well. If it was just a short fling, she shouldn't have been that upset. Could it be that your grandfather, Lin Shi and Zhang Ping both seemed to have realized something, wishing to ask Meng Bai if his grandfather had an intimate relationship with this professor but then dumped her, but after giving Meng Bai's completely pale face a single look, the two of them immediately chose to shut their mouths. There were over 1,000 examinees, the entrance examination lasting until noon the next day before it was completely finished. After continuing for a day and night without rest, the 6 professors from different departments and the single-armed elder who watched from the side didn't seem all that tired, some of them instead unable to control the looks of excitement in their eyes. The number of examinees with extraordinary potential really isn't that few, even someone from one family coming. When the last student left, the old man with the grizzled great beard immediately said impatiently. If that Lin Shi doesn't end up joining our statecraft department, then don't fight me over this one family kid. Either way, he hasn't displayed that much talent in the other fields. This type of aptitude, training it up will also be extremely fast. If he is let into our self-defense department, it will also be extremely suitable. The black-haired man spoke with a hint of mockery. You. The gold man with the grizzled great beard trembled. The black-haired man said unhurriedly, however, if Lin Shi's heaven's choice doesn't allow him to enter our self-defense department, then it is enough if I get that surnamely youngster. I am willing to step aside on the one family individual for you. The elder with the great grizzled beard stared blankly. The one surnamed Li. The Li Kaiyun from Chaste Blossom City. The large middle-aged married woman gave the black-haired man a strange look. His aptitude is 3. I don't really understand, what is so special about him? The black-haired male's expression jumped. Loyalty and honor, I saw in his eyes a light most suitable for a soldier, a devout faith. Then what about that Gao family's young lady? I reckon you all will definitely want to fight over her as well. The rigid middle-aged man in the hat said slowly. Wen family's Wen Xuanyu and Gao family's Gao Yanan, we should just leave it up to heaven's choice as well. The single-armed elder on the side said. Let Lin Shi pick first, whichever one he chooses, then we will eliminate that as an option for the other two. If Lin Shi doesn't choose spiritual sacrifice, then when it is Wen Xuanyu and Gao Yanan's turn to choose, we will also remove spiritual sacrifice as an option. Professor Yuhua, after all, your Yuhua family's little fella has quite the talent as well already, belongs to your spiritual sacrifice department. What do you all think about my arrangements? We will just do things as the vice principal suggests. The 6 professors all stood up, respectfully bowing towards the elder, starting to put away the respective items on the long table before them. 2 hours later, all of the examinees gathered in front of a tent. The black-robed lecturer with the strict expression held a long sheepskin scroll in his hands, standing before the 1,000-plus examinees, starting to read in a calm and serious voice. Zhang Qin, composite score 15 points, chosen to enter the Academy's Statecraft Department. Deng Xin, composite score 15 points, chosen to enter the Academy's Medicine Department. Wang Xingluan, composite score 16 points, chosen to enter the Self-Defense Department. Chapter Volume 113. Heaven's Choice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. All of the students were extremely nervous, even the hands of those border barbarians who had definitely experienced many dangers, recommended from desolate border, were trembling slightly. Green Luan Academy was Yunqin Empire's holy land, many people coming here with the mindset of making a pilgrimage. However, apart from Lin Shi, everyone understood clearly that Green Luan Academy's entrance exam was always eccentric and harsh, preferring to go without rather than to resort to shoddy options. They would only accept 20 to 30% of the examinees at most. Lin Shi, Zhang Ping, Li Kaiyun, Xiang Lin, and the still pale-faced Meng Bai, these 5 bumpkins stretched out their necks as well, staring at that black-robed middle-aged man who was reading out the names of those who were accepted. An unsuppressible cheer of joy would sound after almost each name that was called, drawing many looks of envy. Xiang Lin, composite score 16 points, chosen to enter Statecraft Department. Suddenly, Xiang Lin also couldn't restrain his emotions, screaming out, about to shed tears of joy. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer called out his name. Congratulations! Lin Shi, Zhang Ping, Li Kaiyun, and Meng Bai all cheered as well, hugging Xiang Lin. Even though statecraft wasn't the most ideal department in the hearts of many hot-blooded and ambitious youngsters, as long as they can enter the academy, it was already an incomparable honor. Lu Huajun, composite score 17 points, chosen to enter medicine department. Qiu Shaoling, composite score 18 points, chosen to enter statecraft department. All of a sudden, Li Kaiyun couldn't help but jump, screaming out in joy. Hot tears poured out from his eyes, because the black-robed middle-aged lecturer called out his name. Li Kaiyun, composite score 18 points, chosen to enter self-defense department. Not only did he pass Green 1 Academy's examination, he even entered the self-defense department he wanted to enter the most. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer continued, already announcing more than 50 names in a flash. After cheering for joy, Zhang Ping and Meng Bai became more nervous, especially Meng Bai, drops of sweat even hanging from the tips of his hair. His lips were moving slightly, no one knowing what he was mumbling. Meng Bai, composite score 20 points, chosen to enter the internal study department. Right at this time, the black-robed middle-aged lecturer suddenly shouted Meng Bai's name. The little fatty Meng Bai was too nervous, to the point where he almost lost track of what was going on right now. When he heard his name called out, in a daze, he thought that it was time for him to take a test, which was why he didn't immediately cry out, instead staggering towards the black-robed middle-aged lecturer in a flustered manner. Before everyone saw what he was trying to do, he even tripped and fell. Ah! After falling down, he instead became clear-headed, screaming out, "I passed the test. I entered the academy. I actually made it in." Normally, when others saw Meng Bai's current appearance, most people would probably mock him, but right now, most of the students were so nervous the tips of their noses were sweating, inwardly thinking, even this type of gluttonous little bumpkin fatty can enter the academy, is there any reasoning left in this world? Qiu Lu, composite score 20 points, chosen to enter the self-defense department. While Lin Shi was watching Meng Bai smile endlessly, he suddenly felt eyes full of rancor directed at him. He also passed the test. Lin Shi turned around, noticing that the gaze originated from the tender-faced golden spoon youngster who he had previously had a conflict with when first arriving here. From this golden-clothed youngster's elated and proud look, it seemed like the Qiu Lu the middle-aged lecturer just called out should precisely be him. Lin Shi also made a face at this golden-clothed youngster, and then turned around, not paying him any more attention. Zhang Ping, composite score 20 points, chosen to enter the natural arts department. At this time, the black-robed middle-aged lecturer called out Zhang Ping's name. Meanwhile, Zhang Ping immediately cheered, hugging Lin Shi right away. Lin Shi chuckled, patting Zhang Ping's back, only to discover that the center of Zhang Ping's back was already completely drenched in sweat. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer's serious voice continued. The atmosphere became more and more tense, especially for many who felt that their performance wasn't as good as they had hoped, their expressions already becoming pale. It was because even though most of the examinees didn't understand what kind of standard Green 1 Academy used to calculate the score too well, what was easy to see was that the higher the score, the better one's test went. The further they went on, the more distant the hope of their names being called would become. Mu Shanzi, composite score 23 points, chosen to enter the self-defense department. Lin Shi, it's him. Li Kaiyun and Xiang Lin both reminded Lin Shi. The one named Mu Shanzi was precisely the one in the silver robes with the embroidered silver flowers, hair combed until it was glossy, that golden spoon youngster Lin Shi had previously made a wager with. Zhang Ping's face immediately changed. His surname is Mu, is he someone from Xixia province's Mu family? Lin Shi quietly asked, is Mu family that amazing? Mu family's Mu Liang is precisely Xixia province's province supervisor. It seems like even until now, I haven't heard your name called. At this time, a complacent-faced Mu Shanzi already walked over, saying this to Lin Shi with a cold smile. Zhang Ping subconsciously took a step back. Lin Shi laughed in an extremely easygoing manner. Should be later on. Is that so? Mu Shanzi stared blankly for a moment, and then immediately afterwards, undisguisable anger appeared on his face. He didn't expect Lin Shi to have this type of reaction even at this time. Then, Lin Shi's following reaction even more so made his little face produce an abnormal flush of redness from anger. It was because Lin Shi earnestly nodded, saying as if it was but a matter of fact, that is so. Good, good, don't regret it now. Mu Shanzi held himself back, slowly spitting out these words. Really is slow. Lin Shi turned around, muttering to himself out of habit, but the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up into a slight smile. From the start until now, the number of past examinees the black-robed middle-aged lecturer called out had already reached more than 160, so there wouldn't be that many more names. Meanwhile, among these 160-something accepted examinees, 90% of them had composite scores of under 20 points, which was to say, this Mu Shanzi had obtained quite the high performance results. Only, it was unfortunate that his opponent was Lin Shi. Lin Shi had absolute confidence. The longer he had to wait for his name to be called, the more Lin Shi knew his score could only go higher. Leng Qiuyu, composite score 27 points, chosen to enter medicine department. Yu Huatianji, composite score 27 points, chosen to enter spiritual sacrifice department. That when the black-robed middle-aged man reported these two names, many students already couldn't help but cry, sounds of sobbing echoing through the lakeside. Most people personally saw Leng Qiuyu and the golden-haired Yu Huatianji's aptitude tests. Regardless of how arrogant they were, these youngsters all understood inside that there was no way they could surpass Leng family and Yu Hua family's heirs. Her name wasn't called. Don't tell me she wasn't accepted. Under the sobs and cries, Lin Shi's gaze instead passed through the crowd, landing on that tall and slender green-clothed young woman. Apart from the bumpkins at his side, his attention had always been focused on this green-clothed young lady who made his heart rate quicken. Now, it was already close to the end, but the black-robed middle-aged lecturer still didn't call out this green-clothed young lady's name. Yet what was even more strange right now was that this green-clothed young lady still had an extremely natural expression, full of radiance, as if she was just calmly sightseeing. Those facial features from which Lin Shi couldn't pick a single flaw from and the easygoing and natural attitude made Lin Shi become a bit stunned again. Are you still going to tell me that your name will be called later? An angry shout interrupted Lin Shi's thoughts. When he turned around, a furious Mu Shanzi was glaring at him with a cold expression. By now, all those who passed the test have pretty much all been called out, yet you still have the face to say that you are still later. When he saw Lin Shi turn around, Mu Shanzi coldly spoke once more. Lin Shi's brows also furrowed, his face a bit perplexed. Meng Bai, Zhang Ping, and the others all looked at him, unable to say anything. It was because at this time, the black-robed middle-aged man already stopped. It seemed like those who had passed the examination really had all been announced. When Lin Shi's stunned and surprised expression entered Mu Shanzi's eyes, inwardly feeling pleased, the expression of ridicule on his face also became stronger, his tone also becoming more harsh. It seems like if I didn't come here to watch you, you definitely would have ran away when no one is paying any attention, right? What are you talking about? Meng Bai's face was entirely red, wishing to speak out in Lin Shi's place, but right at this time, the black-robed middle-aged man who had already stopped instead spoke up. Gao Yanin, composite score 30 points, heaven's choice, heaven's choice. Everyone was stunned. Lin Shi stared blankly. Before he had time to think about what these two words meant, the black-robed middle-aged lecturer already continuously read out, Lin Shi, composite score 31 points, heaven's choice. Wen Xuanyu, composite score 31 points, heaven's choice. What? Lin Shi, you. Cries of disbelief sounded. Meng Bai, in particular, almost immediately screamed out. Mu Shanxi's cold expression immediately went rigid, face falling ashen. Composite score 31 points, heaven's choice, how could this be? Lin Shi, how did you do it? Zhang Ping, Xiang Lin, and Li Kaiyun also entered a complete state of shock. Even though they all hoped for Lin Shi to pass, this type of result really was something they truly never expected. Heaven's choice, how could this be? Mu Shanxi's face went from ashen to abnormally pale, as if his soul left his body. He, who was born a golden spoon, knew far more than the 1/3 golden spoon Meng Bai and bumpkins like Zhang Ping. He knew that this composite score was a sum of the scores from the first cultivation aptitude test and the following examination's results. Meanwhile, Lin Shi's aptitude was only 2, which meant that his following examination result was even higher than Gao Yanin and Wen Xuanyu's. Normally speaking, when faced with the 6 professors, as long as 1 or 2 of them were interested in you, then this examinee would basically be able to enter the academy. However, this heaven's choice meant that the number of professors who were fond of him was too many, fighting over him to the point where they couldn't come to a decision, only then would it become heaven's choice. A bumpkin like him with normal aptitude, just what was so special about him, for so many professors to fight over him, carry out heaven's choice. Hey, what is this heaven's choice? What even more so made him almost vomit blood was that at this time, Lin Shi was still acting like this, asking him this kind of question. 1 second. Chapter Volume 114. Unfading Glory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Right when Lin Shi asked Mu Shanxi the absurd question of what heaven's choice was, that green-clothed young lady who had always remained extremely natural revealed a faint smile, her small and exquisite nose moving slightly, as if a light breeze gently stirred a clear pond. BDNVL.M. At the same time, an icily arrogant black-haired youngster's face that was full of pride instead suddenly changed to shock and confusion. His eyes were like sharp swords, sweeping past Lin Shi's body. He was from one family, even in these over 1,000 examinees who gathered from the entire Yunqin Empire, he was vastly superior, obtaining a shocking composite score of 31 points. However, he never expected there would be someone who obtained the same score as himself, moreover a young man with only 2 levels of cultivation aptitude, from some ordinary small border town. Heaven's choice is when an agreement cannot be reached because all of the department heads want someone, so the heavens will make the decision instead. A golden spoon youngster who had been chosen replied to Lin Shi's question with a face of shock and disbelief. Only now were the examinees who passed the entrance examination fully announced. Even the black-robed middle-aged man who called out Lin Shi's name couldn't help but give Lin Shi a look, not understanding why this youngster who came from a small border town could obtain such astonishing results, moreover in the end needing to use heaven's choice to determine which department he ended up in. Only after giving Lin Shi a look, did this black-robed middle-aged lecturer use his usual serious tone to slowly say, "Those who have passed the academy examination, stay behind. Those who did not, please leave first." Following these words, this place momentarily became even more chaotic. Some examinees who failed to get accepted broke down into tears, some with heroic ambitions who vowed to end their own lives if they didn't enter actually prepared to cut themselves down on the spot. However, a group of Green One Academy students in black academy robes moved through the chaotic scene in an extremely practiced manner, stopping those bloody scenes from happening, at the same time quickly putting away the tents So she's named Gao Yanin. She actually also ended up as Heaven's choice. Through this chaotic scene, Lin Shi, who stood in place without moving, saw that green-clothed young lady walk up to a slightly more vacant place to wait. What left him dumbstruck was that in this type of chaotic and noisy environment, this pretty green-clothed young lady actually laid down by a willow tree next to the lake, taking a nap as if no one else was here. I'm Lu Yingting. From today on, we are fellow students in the academy. The Golden Spoon youngster who replied to his question about Heaven's choice in Mu Shanzi's place reached out his hand towards Lin Shi and the others in a friendly manner. This Golden Spoon youngster was rather short and stout, face honest and sincere, skin color a bit darker. He wore green jade-colored silk clothes on his body, a fine jade lion hanging from his waist. Mu Shanzi suddenly erupted with rage from humiliation, shouting at this Golden Spoon youngster, acting friendly to them in front of me, isn't this not giving me any face at all? Even if you want to become friends with them, you have to at least wait until I leave, right? The darker-skinned Lu Yingting's eyebrows jumped, not showing any lenience, curling his lips and saying, your dad is a province supervisor, my dad is also a province supervisor. You entered the academy, I also entered the academy, why do I have to give you face? Mu Shanzi opened his mouth, yet couldn't say anything, because he really didn't have much reason behind his actions in this situation. The other side's decision to be friendly was his business, telling others not to be friends really was a bit too overbearing. Lin Shi revealed a faint smile, reaching out his hand and shaking it with Lu Yingting's. Towards this Golden Spoon, he didn't have too much prejudice either. Mu Shanzi immediately opened his mouth again, his entire face about to become red-purple. Actually, there is something that I wanted to tell everyone for some time, a thunderous, crazy voice sounded from his mouth, making the chaotic scene come to a momentary standstill. Many examinees who were crying from failing to be accepted widened their eyes, looking towards Mu Shanzi, but when everyone looked at him with strange expressions, waiting to see what he wanted to say, they only saw a Golden Spoon shout with his eyes closed, actually. I am a pig. Green Luan Academy's efficiency was extremely shocking. Soon afterwards, the chaotic scene by the lake was completely stabilized. All of the examinees who didn't pass the test were sent out of this camp. All of the tents were collected and properly folded up. Instead, it was the many chariots that were parked outside that became chaotic. A few chariots began to leave, while those who came from other academies or high officials from other places began to busily recruit students who didn't pass the test. That is. Suddenly, many people who were bustling about the chariots froze, especially the academy head elders who were already well on in their years. After a moment of absent-mindedness, they all respectfully bowed towards the lakeside. These figures who bowed down all had quite the statuses, but their display of respect was done sincerely, their eyes full of shock and reverence. All of the examinees felt like this was strange. When they followed these people's eyes, they saw that under the midday sunlight, the single-armed elder whose face was covered by marks of great experience and 6 professors came out from the last tent that was taken down. Meanwhile, those people's display of respect seemed to be all directed at that single-armed elder. It's Vice Principal Xia, someone subconsciously called out this elder's name, and then low cries of alarm sounded like a tide. He is Vice Principal Xia. Why is his arm? Almost all of the examinees who heard this title, regardless of whether they were accepted or not, they all felt as if their bodies were struck by lightning, as if they were seeing this elder for the first time. When these people snapped out of their daze, almost all of them showed polite and respectful attitudes, as if they were looking up to a great mountain, paying their respects to this elder. Vice Principal Xia. Who is he? Lin Shi asked with a somewhat stunned expression. Li Kaiyan's legs were shaking, not because of fear, but because he was shaking from the core. His voice was also shaking, as if it was hard for him to speak. Vice Principal Xia is one of the 17 Green One Academy students who suppressed Starfall City in Starfall Lake's battle together with Principal Zhang. So he was Vice Principal Xia. One of Green One Academy's 17 students. Lin Shi was stunned. Even though he faced the glory of this empire with the attitude of a tourist, the intense and moving song made him clearly remember these legendary figures. During the long and continuous singing, he also pictured more than once how grand of a scene it was when those 17 Green One Academy students faced that great army of 300,000. Meanwhile now, this elder whose face was full of great changes, no longer carrying much harshness, was actually one of the 17 students from back then. The single-armed elder walked at the very front of the 6 professors and rows of students. He gave a slight nod towards everyone. A wave of shocking power continuously spread from his body. Only valor and loyalty can establish unfading glory, only this will be remembered. He stopped not far from the examinees who were accepted, suddenly saying this. His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly entered everyone's ears. One does not need to be a Green One Academy student to have valor and loyalty, obtain glory. Many examinees were crying from not being accepted, yet after hearing this line, their bodies suddenly shook. Many of them seemed to understand what he was saying, respectfully bowing towards this elder again. After saying those words, this single-armed elder instead used a voice only the examinees by the lakeside could hear. I welcome all of you to Green One Academy. The lakeside was completely quiet. All of these students who passed the test were a bit at a loss for what to do. The single-armed elder didn't pay anyone else any more attention. His wise and far-sighted gaze passed by Lin Shi, Gao Yanan, and Wen Xuanyu's bodies, and then returned to Lin Shi. Lin Shi, we will start the heaven's choice with you. The students in front of Lin Shi moved aside. Lin Shi felt as if his legs had lead poured over them, his mind becoming extremely nervous for no reason. However, what left him stunned was that when he heard the single-armed elder speak, that black-robed middle-aged lecturer walked up to him, producing 6 small sheepskin scrolls, placing them into Lin Shi's hands, saying, choose one of them. Lin Shi randomly picked one of them. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer opened it before everyone, on it written the words, Self-Defense. Heaven's Choice Results, Self-Defense Department. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer then announced with a serious and loud voice. After wasting all this time, he still ended up in my self-defense department. When the black-robed middle-aged lecturer opened the small sheepskin scroll, revealing the words, self-defense, the black-haired man whose age was hard to guess revealed a ruminate smile. Meanwhile, the other professors all turned their heads, releasing a snort with an unpleasant expression. The single-armed elder's eyes landed on the proudly standing Wen Xuanyu's body. Wen Xuanyu, next, it is your turn for heaven's choice. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer put away the self-defense small scroll Lin Shi chose, and then removed one out the remaining 5 small scrolls. Finally, he placed the 4 sheepskin scrolls that were left before Wen Xuanyu. This overly simplified Heaven's Choice method, due to Green One Academy students' tradition, as well as the revealing of the single-armed elder's identity, became extremely serious. Everyone watched with rapt attention, but what was unexpected was that Wen Xuanyu didn't immediately choose a small sheepskin scroll, instead raising his head and shouting out, I am opposed to this. This is unfair. It was clear that he was also extremely nervous, lips shaking a bit. However, his gaze didn't shrink back in the slightest, directly staring at all of the academy personnel before him, including that single-armed elder. Everyone took a deep breath. After all these years, no one dared express unfairness to Green One Academy's entrance examination. Wen Xuanyu really was daring, making many people develop a cold feeling inside. Could it be that he wasn't scared that he might not enter Green One Academy because of this? Why? The single-armed elder gave Wen Xuanyu a dignified look, asking. If it is a fair heaven's choice, then after he made his choice, based on normal reasoning, I should have 6 departments to choose from again. However, the self-defense department was removed, and then another department was taken out, only 4 departments left to choose from. Because of this, I lost the chance to enter the other 2 departments. Wen Xuanyu still didn't cower back. He gave Lin Shi a look, loudly shouting, "Why can I not enter the self-defense department?" Even if his entrance examination results were higher than mine, everyone knows that in the following cultivation to come, it will largely depend on aptitude. His aptitude is only second level. I refuse to believe that my progress in the self-defense department will be inferior to his. When Xuanyu's words sounded, many people's expressions changed. The faces of those in Wen family's chariot in particular became pale. Those who came out from Green Luan Academy all knew that Green Luan Academy's tradition was now called into question. Wen Xuanyu's first half was still understandable, but the second half was clearly directed at Lin Shi, already equivalent to berating Lin Shi right in front of his face, saying that his cultivation aptitude wasn't good enough. You have to remember one thing. In Green Luan Academy, the interest of the group will forever be above that of the individual. However, the single-armed elder seemed to still not be angered, only calmly giving Wen Xuanyu a look. Since you cannot accept the arrangements we found suitable, then I will also agree to let you and the heavens choose which of the 6 departments you belong to. 1. In C.12, they agreed to also remove spiritual sacrifice as an option if Lin Shi didn't choose it. Chapter Volume 115. Those senior brothers and sisters who have departed since you are listening at novelfull.audio. Vice Principal Xia's words made everyone in Wen family's carriage release a great sigh of relief. Once more, 6 small sheepskin scrolls were prepared and brought before Wen Xuanyu. He picked one. The moment the black-robed middle-aged lecturer opened it, his face immediately turned pale. The words on this small sheepskin scroll were, "Internal Study." The black-robed middle-aged lecturer passed over the small sheepskin scroll to Vice Principal Xia and the 6 professors to take a look, at the same time shouting out, "Internal Study Department." A look of happiness flashed past the eyes of the rigid-looking middle-aged man in the hat. Meanwhile, the large middle-aged married woman, the elder with the ash-colored great beard, black-robed old woman and spiritual sacrifice wizened elder instead became even more annoyed. Just now, when Xuanyu directly berated Lin Shi for his cultivation aptitude being inferior, yet Lin Shi didn't seem annoyed at all, completely carefree. This type of easygoing attitude made them feel more and more admiration, but right now, Lin Shi was already self-defense department Madman Qin's student. Vice Principal Xia's gaze stopped over the green-clothed young lady. "Gao Yanan, will you accept the heaven's choice we have prepared, or do you wish to be like Wen Xuanyu? Either way is fine with me. After all, once we enter the academy, if we have an interest, it's not like we can't study the contents of other departments, right? Moreover, if the academy students volunteer to head to the border army, isn't that permitted as well? So what difference does it make?" The green-clothed young lady replied in an indifferent manner, almost making a large group of people faint. Wen Xuanyu also almost fainted. "This is allowed. What you said is correct." A rare smile appeared on Vice Principal Xia's face. He nodded towards the black-robed middle-aged lecturer, and then the latter brought 4 small sheepskin scrolls up before Gao Yanan. Gao Yanan randomly chose one. This time, the larger middle-aged married woman's brows relaxed, because the small sheepskin scroll had the word medicine on it. "We aren't in the same department." When Lin Shi saw the middle-aged lecturer loudly read medicine department, he couldn't help but become a bit depressed. "But I can choose to study medicine department's contents." However, soon afterwards, the corners of his lips curled slightly upwards. "These brothers and sisters wish to train in the border army. According to our academy's tradition, before they leave, they should meet you all." Vice Principal Zhang's voice sounded again. His voice was still not all that resounding, but many people at Lin Shi's side, including Li Kaiyun, trembled. They looked at the senior brothers and sisters who were organized in a neat and tidy manner behind the 6 professors, their eyes immediately revealing blazing radiance. Towards the academy's traditions, aside from a few golden spoons, most of the newly accepted students didn't understand too much, but what Li Kaiyun and the others were extremely clear on was that the various border armies were all extremely dangerous places. Perhaps out of all of these senior brothers and sisters, quite a few of them would forever remain in the desolate border, never to return. He wanders the world under the heavens with a Qilin and divine duck, visiting desolate places none others have ever been to, taken the heads of demons, taken the heads of generals of massive armies, his glory at Starfall Lake something none other can match. A solemn and respectful singing suddenly began. The black-robed academy students behind the 6 professors and lecturer began to leave, forming a long line, walking towards Four Seasons Plains. Li Kaiyun and the others straightened their chests. These academy students were pursuing the glory of their seniors, precisely the Empire's pillars and shields. Meanwhile, they were now already official students, so they also shouldered this type of mission. Have Yunqin Empire's border wars always been extremely tense? Lin Shi thought while frowning. In this type of setting, even him who subconsciously didn't feel like he had much responsibility in this empire was unknowingly affected, feeling like he should properly look into what the circumstances of the border armies were like. Let's go, we are returning to Green Luan Academy. While watching the long black line gradually disappear from his line of sight, Vice Principal Xia said this to Lin Shi and the others. Then, he turned around, moving around Summer Spirit Lake together with all of the professors and lecturers, heading north. Are we going to leave? Lin Shi was suddenly startled, rushing over to the end of the crowd, waving with everything he had towards the place where the carriages gathered. The anxious expression on his face quickly disappeared, a happy smile immediately blossoming on his face like sunshine. It was because at the limits of his line of sight, a shabby-looking carriage came out from the endless carriages, that old driver who accompanied him in that journey across half of Yunqin Empire sitting at the very front, seeing him off as he left together with the Academy's people. In this world, once he left Deerwood Town, apart from his old man, mother, and little sister, he pretty much didn't have a single friend. The youngsters his age in Deerwood Town knew too little, the amount of things they didn't understand too many. Even when they really did interact, they treated him like a weirdo, calling him Lin II. Even though this old driver surnamed Lu didn't speak much, nor did he tell Lin Shi too much about his past, in this past month, he had taken care of him extremely well. Unknowingly, this elder surnamed Lu became his first friend after arriving in this world. Then came the freckled-faced little fatty Meng Bai, after that Li Kaiyun, Zhang Ping, and Xiang Lin. As he followed the huge group, watched as Meng Bai and the others' tender faces become showered in faint golden sunshine, a faint warm smile appeared on Lin Shi's face, at the same time, the words, Principal Zhang uncontrollably emerged in his mind once more. This legendary middle-aged uncle, just what kind of person was he? Why did he leave behind so many rather eccentric traditions in Green Luan Academy, so many strange terms? Regardless of whether it was the older driver or Meng Bai's group, he didn't think any of them could understand his previous world. If he told them about things from his past world, they would definitely feel nervous, tell him not to speak randomly. When they were at Apricot Blossom Village outside Four Seasons Plains, the old driver already felt that he was telling an utterly absurd story. This was a lack of comprehension and disbelief that came from the bottom of his heart. This was just like how a traveler had no way of recounting his entire journey to others, sometimes naturally feeling a mysterious sense of regret and loneliness. If this continued long-term, Lin Shi knew that even he might start to doubt whether he really came from a different world, start to really believe that he caught a bad cold, and then dreamt a long and extremely ridiculous dream. If he is like me, from a different world, then during these past few decades, he must have felt really lonely, right? In Lin Shi's mind, the scene portrayed by that song inadvertently began to appear again. A middle-aged uncle, together with a grotesquely shaped, huge dog-like beast, as well as a mandarin duck-like strange beast moved through the wilderness. This scene that was involuntarily produced was extremely blurry, but it gave Lin Shi a strange sentimental feeling. If he really is like me, establishing legends like this, don't tell me he has an ability just like mine. Suddenly, Lin Shi's body shook greatly, thinking of this possibility. What's wrong? Meng Bai, who was next to Lin, she sensed that something was off, and thus couldn't help but quietly ask. It's nothing. Lin, she didn't want to lie either, only saying, I was thinking about the legendary Principal Zhang's things. Oh. Meng Bai whispered into Lin Shi's ear, do you know what I am thinking about? Lin Shi shook his head. I don't. Meng Bai had a bitter expression on his face. He gestured forward, saying, I am wondering just where exactly did my grandfather provoke that professor. Once I enter the academy, all types of rumors will be made about me. Lin Shi directly laughed. Where exactly is Green Lawn Academy? Where are we headed? The accepted examinees were all rather young after all, so after they followed Summer Spirit Lake for half a day with no sign of a stop in sight, there was more and more whispering. There was someone who couldn't help but ask this question. The academy's professors, lecturers, and venerable vice principal Xia didn't prevent these new students from having private discussions. They didn't show any strictness, these individuals not saying much. However, upon hearing someone ask this with a slightly louder voice, that black-robed middle-aged lecturer surprisingly pointed towards the distance. Green Lawn Academy is right there, that is where we are headed. The place the black-robed middle-aged lecturer pointed at was an enormous mountain range, everything halfway up these mountains covered in ice and snow. They were incredibly massive, the mountain peaks above the cloud layer, impossible to see the mountain summit. Heaven Ascension Mountain Range. Are we going to directly walk up there? A commotion broke out between the new students. There were no lack of individuals who knew that Green Lawn Academy was built on this enormous mountain range, but even Lin Shi, who knew the least, when he entered Four Seasons Plains, had heard the old driver explain that the Sea of Mountains and Heaven Ascension Mountain Range were the two greatest mountain ranges in Yunqin Empire's territory. Four Seasons Plains was precisely a basin between these two mountain ranges, while the distance from Summer Spirit Lake to Heaven Ascension Mountain Range, by foot, would take at least 3 or 4 days to traverse. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer's serious voice didn't carry any emotional fluctuations or pauses. All of you are already the Academy's new students. Your training, from this moment, has already begun, which means, your first lesson has already begun. According to the Academy's tradition, your performance is already being noted. Students whose performance are exceptional will be rewarded with points, while the opposite will be punished, have points deducted. All of the new students' minds went cold. Meanwhile, after the black-robed middle-aged man paused slightly, he then added, for Vice Principal Xia to accompany all of you on this path to the Academy, this is something you all should rejoice and feel honor about. The professors and lecturers up ahead suddenly stopped. The group of new students who were now ill at ease almost ran into each other like a clump. Come here to receive a cloak, one per person. When the black-robed middle-aged lecturer's cold and stern voice sounded, all of the lecturers removed the large bags they carried on their backs. Those tents from before had all been collapsed and left in an orderly pile by the lakeside, looking like others would come later to take care of them. Meanwhile, along the way, Lin Shi originally also tried to guess what Xia Yanbing and the other lecturers were carrying in the large bags on their backs, and now, he learned the answer. Inside every lecturer's large bag were bright, pure black cloaks. Chapter Volume 116. Apricot flower blooms or withers, he isn't there. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is the Academy's uniform. The strong feeling of honor completely swept away the fatigue of these new students, many of them looking forward to wearing Green Lawn Academy's uniform for quite some time already. Even though there weren't any markings on the black cloak each person received, the pure black color, as well as the extremely soft and comfortable material left most of the students incredibly excited. This is made from the fur of northern sea otters. It doesn't reflect any light in the darkness, and it has astonishing thermal and waterproofing properties. The most important thing is that there won't be much noise when raindrops fall onto it or when we run quickly. A border barbarian new student recognized the cloak's material, his expression changing slightly. In the army, Only elite soldiers at the town supervisor level had a chance of being provided with this type of cold and water-resistant cloak. Your eyesight isn't bad. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer gave a direct response. These are cloaks made from the fur of northern sea otters, every single one worth 50.2 gold. Moreover, the production quantity is extremely limited, it isn't circulated along the markets. While many of the new students became speechless at the value of the cloaks in their hands, the black-robed middle-aged lecturer already continued. As early as half a century ago, the Academy's seniors already proved the Academy's worth, which is why the Empire has invested a large amount of resources into the 3 great academies to raise the chosen elites, which is in the nurturing of you all. However, there is no way the Empire's resources are limitless, hence the strict limitation on the number of accepted students the great academies take in each year. From today forth, every single one of you needs to remember your own identities. You all are the hope of the Empire's sharp swords and sturdy shields. I am Wang Yike, your first lessons lecturer. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer turned around, continuing forward. You all need to be worthy of what has been invested. This was the intent Lin Shi immediately received from this lecturer's first lesson. Soon afterwards, all of the new students understood why they were given this type of cloak. The sky gradually darkened. When their weary footsteps left Summer Spirit Lake far behind them, a gust of frigid wind swept over from Heaven Ascension mountain range. The surrounding atmosphere directly changed from summer to deep winter. All of the new students, including Lin Shi, put on their black cloaks. The spacious cloak resisted the cold winds blowing straight at them, also returning a bit of life back to these new students' small faces. The black-robed middle-aged lecturer stopped before a continuous expanse of dried yellow grassland. Today, we are going to camp here. Pay close attention to how I set up this military tent, I will only do it once. Then, all of you will repeat it once, those who fail will have half a point deducted. The first sentence he spoke made the new students whose souls and stomachs were already aching release a great breath of relief, but his following words immediately placed their minds on edge. The small tents were also black, judging from their size, seemingly able to accommodate 2 or 3 people each. All of these academy professors and lecturers only brought one with them, clearly only using them as a demonstration. If nothing unexpected happened, they were most likely going to spend the night in the open. Meng Bai wrinkled his nose, subconsciously tugging at his own cloak. The cold air made his nose a bit uncomfortable. This black cloak was most likely going to be used as a blanket tonight. Right at this time, the black-haired male from the Self-Defense Department suddenly said coldly, "Self-Defense Department's new students, gather here where I am." Lin Shi and Li Kaiyun exchanged a look, both of them heading towards the place where the black-haired man stood in confusion. He really is Madman Qin. Someone immediately cursed out in a low voice from among the remaining professors. Haha. The grave and stern black-haired man instead laughed loudly, his laughter a bit haughty, as if this was his true nature. He turned around, facing the frigid winds, his black hair fluttering about wildly behind him. Let's go, Self-Defense Department kids, we are continuing forward. Vice Principal Xia gave this black-haired man a look, revealing a faint smile, not saying anything. We still have to continue forward. The minds of the Self-Defense Department's new students all became cold, only feeling their legs immediately becoming more sore. Meanwhile, most of the new students from other departments rejoiced. Only the blonde and skinny youngster from Yuhua family muttered to himself, valor and loyalty, scars and difficulties, only these can produce the most dazzling glory. His words immediately drew the inward cursing of a group of spiritual sacrifice department youngsters near him. Is there something wrong with your head? If you don't want any rest, then just follow those self-defense department people. Can this be considered the start of cultivation? Only Lin Shi, whose feet were aching unbearably, found this rather new and exciting. Lin Shi, take this. Meng Bai suddenly ran over, quickly slipping a bag of goods to Lin Shi. What is it? Lin Shi stared blankly. Before Meng Bai had time to reply, he was seen by the black-haired man and the middle-aged lecturer named Wang Yike. The black-haired man gave Meng Bai and Wang Yike a look, and then chuckled. "Little fatty, is it food? Seems like you aren't the type to go hungry, some people are in luck." Meng Bai was so scared his legs trembled. Right at this time, Wang Yike's serious voice sounded. "The student understands to have rations ready at any time, moreover supporting his companions, half a point added." Meng Bai was immediately stupefied. Even though he didn't know what the so-called points were, anyone could tell that they were good things, yet he was actually so lucky. What always having rations ready? He was just a glutton, stashing away quite a few tasty things. The black-haired male walked at the very front, dressed entirely in black. At his side was Xia Yanbing, the hem and sleeves of his robe embroidered in gold. Behind these two followed Lin Shi and a group of Self-Defense Department new students. Now, it was clear that Xia Yanbing was also a lecturer of the Self-Defense Department. Only when one is full will one have strength, this is the most basic principle. Once one remains hungry for a long time, not only will it affect one's stamina, it will also affect one's mind and reaction speed, even make one mysteriously make errors in judgment. From today on, you all must never forget this. While marching at a moderate pace, facing the chilly wind, the black-haired man warned these new Self-Defense Department students. Suddenly, he said something that made Lin Shi and the others fall headfirst. "Xia Yanbing, I'm a bit tired, why don't you teach them some things? You're actually tired, yet you are still making them hurry along, moreover even saying you're tired out loud." This Professor Qin really was a bit crazy. In situations of extreme exhaustion, chatting with your companions can help distract you a bit, allowing yourself to walk further. Similarly, in situations where your injuries are a bit more serious, maintaining your cool and talking to distract yourself can also increase your chances of survival a bit. Xia Yanbing's complexion was handsome and outstanding, forehead exposed, hair neatly bound behind him with a green cloth band. His bearing was also comparative easygoing, the pressure he gave Lin Shi and the others not as great as that black-haired man. "I know many of you actually don't know much about Green One Academy and our self-defense department, which is why starting from now, if you all have any questions, you can ask me first." Meanwhile, his following words immediately made all of the new self-defense department students, including Lin Shi and Li Kaiyun, become excited. Almost without any hesitation, Lin Shi took a deep breath, the first to speak out, asking a question he always wanted to ask, but never had a chance to. "Is Principal Zhang still here? Once we enter the academy, can we meet Principal Zhang?" Xia Yanbing's eyebrows suddenly jumped, the brows of the black-haired man who didn't turn around also jumped. "No one knows where Principal Zhang is right now." Then, Xia Yanbing looked straight at Lin Shi, saying, "A certain early morning 16 years ago, he left Green One Academy to wander the world." Apart from Lin Shi, this was also the first time the other new Self-Defense Department students heard anything concrete about the legendary middle-aged uncle's whereabouts. Everyone's bodies shook slightly. "He isn't in Green One Academy." Lin Shi was full of disappointment, to the point where he became a bit speechless. "Old friend, where are you? Apricot Blossom Village's apricot flowers have already bloomed, yet you still haven't returned to take a look." What Lin Shi was completely unaware of was that right now, where the new students of the other departments were, the single-armed elder who was admired by the entire Yunqin Empire was sitting on a blanket, quietly watching as the black-robed middle-aged lecturer Wang Yike explained how to take apart and quickly reassemble that black military tent. His sight was aimed into the distance, but his mind was full of melancholy. He has already wandered for 16 years, not even the academy knows where his current whereabouts are. Why doesn't he come back to visit? A round-faced youngster in Lin Shi's group who was also full of veneration towards Principal Zhang asked in a somewhat absent-minded manner. What a stupid question. A tall and sturdy short-haired border barbarian, who was also full of adoration towards Principal Zhang, said with irritation, someone important like him, who can fathom what he wishes to do. Perhaps during these years, he has always been involved in something world-shocking within Yunqin Empire, or maybe he has infiltrated deeply into the enemy's territory, just that we had no idea. This extremely sturdy, border barbarian, youngster's words clearly carried blind adoration, as well as an attitude of trying to belittle the other students, but Xia Yanbing didn't become upset when he heard this, instead nodding in a calm manner, saying, "This is indeed a foolish question. A figure like Principal Zhang, no matter what he does, he definitely has his reasons for doing so, we are completely incapable of guessing at what they are." Next question. What are academic points? A timid-looking skinny youngster mustered his courage and asked. Xia Yanbing nodded and said, "Our different departments all have many courses, many different trials. Completing a course, a trial, or even do some noteworthy things, and you will obtain points as a reward. As for how many points are rewarded, it will be determined through the level of difficulty and contribution. Once enough points are accumulated, then one can advance to the next phase's courses. At the same time, these points can be exchanged for the Academy's material rewards, for example, the medicines needed for cultivation, armors and weapons needed for battle." Chapter Volume 117. Kill to stop killing, only then can violence be stopped. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What kind of course subjects does our self-defense department have? Only techniques for killing and prevention of being killed. Once we reach the academy, you all will naturally slowly understand. Why is our department called self-defense? Kill to stop killing, only then can violence be stopped. The question and answer session continued. Some people felt that Xia Yanbing's explanation of the course content was a bit too serious, so they asked a comparatively lighter question, but what none of them expected was that Xia Yanbing's reply was even colder. This is what the principal has said before, as well as the principle our Green One Academy upholds. While looking at the youngsters who clearly found this a bit hard to accept, Xia Yanbing added, "Our Green One Academy will also teach you all many other principles the outside world doesn't acknowledge. You all can choose not to listen to them. Our academy is only responsible for paving the road. As for what kind of path you wish to take, if you want to go down this path, all of you have the freedom to choose yourselves." The face of Li Kaiyun next to Lin Shi was immediately filled with indescribable shock. He looked at the black-haired man and Xia Yanbing, who was steady like a boulder under the darkness of night. The academy does not even mind if we acknowledge the academy's principles or not. However, there is already wrong and right in things. If the students who leave the academy do wrong things, don't tell me that the academy won't step in to punish them. A bookworm-like new student was extremely agitated, loudly speaking out. Xia Yanbing gave this new student a look, still calmly replying, "What is right, and what is wrong?" One type might be when there is a power great enough to establish regulations deciding what is right and what is wrong, another type might be the evaluation of future people. This bookworm-like new student's face immediately became red from impatience, about to speak out again, but at this time, Lin Shi, who hadn't spoken for quite some time, instead suddenly said, "Teacher Xia's meaning is that each person has their own scale within their mind. Right or wrong is something that originally exists within each of our hearts to begin with." Xia Yanbing didn't say anything, but instead gave Lin Shi a look of astonishment and praise. Even that black-haired man couldn't help but turn around to give Lin Shi a look. By now, Lin Shi already calmed down. He, who wasn't from this world to begin with, naturally wasn't as inflexible as this world's people. This academy, whose principles were innately closer to his world's rules and regulations, was naturally clear and easy to accept. Approximately how many academic points can be obtained from an ordinary course? What kind of things can they be exchanged for? After wrapping the soft and warm black cloak a bit tighter around himself, Lin Shi first asked an extremely practical question. An ordinary course, once passed, will earn you 2 to 3 points. The things that can be exchanged for are worth roughly 1 to 200 gold. Xia Yanbing continued walking while replying to Lin Shi's question. However, the things that are valued at around 1 to 200 gold in the academy are just like the cloaks on your bodies, just an approximate cost, moreover extremely difficult to purchase through ordinary means in the outside world. This immediately produced an uproar. Even for a golden spoon youngster, 1 to 200 gold wasn't a small figure. Moreover, from Xia Yanbing's unspoken implication, the things these 2 to 3 points could be exchanged for might very well be unique to the academy. Thus, if one wished to buy these things outside, it wouldn't be a price of just a few times greater. Turns out these points are worth so much. No wonder this Professor Qin said Meng Bai had a great stroke of luck. When he thought of his previous life university's 80 yuan per credit, Lin Shi immediately couldn't help but reveal a bit of a bitter laugh. After releasing a bitter laugh, Lin Shi immediately followed with another question. The aptitude that we had tested at the start, just what kind of aptitude is it? Many new students immediately inwardly curled their lips. This question Lin Shi asked was obviously a foolish one in their eyes. However, Xia Yanbing seemed to have seen all of the puzzlement Lin Shi felt concerning this question. Not only did he not immediately berate him for asking a stupid question, he instead explained in an extremely patient manner, our cultivation power is called soul force. Soul force is extremely strong, and it is naturally even more useful when confronting an enemy. Meanwhile, some people's innate ability to cultivate soul force is faster, while others cultivate it slower. The same spiritual medicines, when taken by different people, some people's soul force would grow at a great speed, while some would grow at a slower speed. The soul inspection stone can measure our talent in cultivating soul force. Lin Shi remained silent for a moment, and then he asked, then when the exam began, what was the reasoning behind the selection of a weapon? Xia Yanbing slowly said, through the Academy's decades of tests and data collected, under the pressure of that type of environment, the weapon the examinee instinctively chooses can not only reveal a bit of his temperament. In addition, oftentimes, the weapon chosen will be the one most suitable for their cultivation, this test able to foretell certain talents. This type of simple test was actually comprised of so many psychological and massive statistical aspects. Lin Shi was slightly shaken, knowing that he had still underestimated the Academy. Then is the soul force cultivation method something unique to the Academy? Of course not. The cultivation methods are virtually the same, what is different are some methods and teachings of the Academy that can make the cultivation speeds, operation of techniques, and battle methods of those accepted by the Academy far surpass that of other places, turning them into outstanding individuals in the Empire. Blades and swords can be forged anywhere, but the blades and swords forged through our academy are faster. Xia Yanbing was quite fond of Lin Shi from the very beginning. Moreover, in his eyes, Lin Shi was precisely a young bumpkin from a small border town who knew nothing, which was why when facing this type of similarly stupid question, he replied in an extremely gentle manner, moreover even adding a line, fearing that he wasn't clear enough. In spite of the looks he was getting, Lin Shi continuously asked questions, to the point where the scene momentarily became a question and answer between him and Xia Yanbing alone. However, there were some relatively proud and arrogant new students who really felt that his questions were idiotic, unable to take it any longer. Just what kind of traditions does our Green One Academy have exactly? These traditions, were they all left behind by Principal Zhang? That rather soft and immature golden spoon youngster Qiu Lu who aroused dislike towards Lin Shi because of the carriage conflict before shot Lin Shi a glare, snatching the chance to ask. When he heard this question, the corners of Xia Yanbing's mouth instead curled up into a faint smile. He looked towards the distant Heaven Ascension mountain range, slowly saying, Principal Zhang indeed left behind many special traditions in our Green One Academy, some of them rules, some of them habits. Once you all arrive at the academy, you will naturally slowly come to learn of them. These traditions, are all of the academy's teachers able to understand the meaning behind them? For example, why they are called departments, why there are lecturers and professors. Lin Shi's voice sounded again, asking before Qiu Lu, making him shoot Lin Shi another hateful look. These terms Principal Zhang established are indeed things even we do not understand the purpose behind, but just like self-defense, they should have special meanings, just that he hasn't told us yet. Xia Yanbing gave Lin Shi a look, his voice suddenly becoming solemn and respectful. Now that the traditions are mentioned, Principal Zhang left behind two sayings. Reverence can keep people in check, traditions can establish conviction. The most important tradition of our Green One Academy is that each year, all of the new students who are accepted must undergo Principal Zhang's advising on the first day. Lin Shi was stunned. Didn't you say Principal Zhang wasn't in the academy? Xia Yanbing nodded. Principal Zhang isn't in the academy, but before leaving Green One Academy, he left behind a stele, recording the advice he wanted to give you all on it. Moreover, making sure all of the new students each year listen to the lecture is Green One Academy's most important tradition. The stele, what is recorded on the stele? Xiao Lu spoke out before Lin Shi could, but when he opened his mouth, he hadn't had time to think about what he wanted to ask. In a moment of desperation, he ended up asking this. Many new students immediately curled their lips, their faces filled with disdain. Principal Zhang's advice, how can it be something a lecturer can reveal ahead of time? Xia Yanbing shook his head. I do not know. The advice Principal Zhang has left behind are some symbols. To this day, none of the Academy's professors have been able to comprehend their meaning. Incomprehensible symbols. Lin Shi's brows immediately furrowed, starting to think to himself. What exactly is the intention of this? Even the Academy's professors can't decipher Principal Zhang's intentions, so how can we possibly guess at it? Xia Yanbing's reply was outside many people's expectations, many of them starting to mutter. A group of individuals dressed in expensive black cloaks advanced between the endless dark of night and dry grass autumn plains, the question and answer session still continuing. Teacher, why aren't the other departments walking, while we still have to continue? Didn't you all tell us before that only when we eat our fill will we have strength? When will we be able to eat? When can we stop for rest? However, because everyone began to gradually feel close to Xia Yanbing, feeling like it wasn't too hard to make him talk, even this type of question was asked in a somewhat lax and mischievous manner. Xia Yanbing, we can't go about spoiling them now. The border army has an old saying, there is no way a soft whip can make a horse run faster. The black-haired man who had always remained rather quiet lazily said this when he heard this question. Xia Yanbing nodded, replying instead with a question. Do you all know why most of the exam candidates wish to enter the self-defense department? Li Kaiyun was the first to speak. Because the self-defense department is the place closest to honor and glory. Not everyone necessarily shares your way of thinking. Xia Yanbing gave this youngster whose figure wasn't tall, but carried great conviction a look. He shook his head and said, the self-defense department isn't necessarily the place closest to glory, but normally speaking, it is the place closest to death. Those who come out of other departments will also set out to the battlefield, also face all types of dangers, but our self-defense department exists for the sake of leading troops, going to war, and carrying out assassinations. Compared to other departments, the odds of you all facing life and death dangers are much greater. Among your enemies, there will be opponents who have also undergone serious training. Before these types of opponents, deciding the one who ends up surviving, will completely depend on who invested more normally, who is more outstanding. If we compare the entire empire to a bow, then those who come out of the self-defense department are the arrows fired by this bow, the most deadly, but also the most easily snapped. That is why all of you must do your all to become a bit tougher. The more exhausted one becomes, the more one's willpower can be sharpened. This, in itself, is one method to cultivate soul force. Chapter Volume 118. Great winds sweep about, advancing with spear in hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The students had long become utterly beaten. Even though Xia Yanbing's words produced a feeling of perseverance out of seemingly nothing, after walking for close to an hour, an ah sounded. One of them finally couldn't stop themselves from crying out in pain. A thin and weak young lady fell to the ground in pain, hugging her legs. Her small legs clearly cramped. Zhu Ling, Tong Minmin, the two of you support her. We are continuing. However, Xia Yanbing didn't reveal the slightest trace of pity, having two female students lend her an arm, and then continue. This hike towards the Empire's Holy Land now truly became an experience of suffering and torment. Lin Shi's two legs were also aching to the point where they were completely not like his own. There were several areas that produced stabbing pain, the blisters most likely rupturing again. There were 40.1 new students in the self-defense department in total, among them 5 female students. Of the 30.6 men, 4 of them were born as border barbarians, but right now, even these 4 border barbarians who were clearly more sturdy and courageous than the other youngsters weren't feeling that great either. Perhaps due to the border army's customs, they all had a long blade on them. A tall and skinny youngster who was habitually silent, apart from the long blade, even carried a longbow and quiver. Endurance exceeding normal youngsters was these border barbarians' advantage over the other students, but the half a day of trudging around Summer Spirit Lake already completely exhausted this superiority, which was why these 4 border barbarians' footsteps were actually even heavier than the others. Suddenly, the uncommunicative skinny and tall youngster collapsed, his head covered in cold sweat, his legs both cramped. BDNVL.M, it is important to be able to judge the hour and size up the situation. Carrying a blade is a custom of the border army, but you all have to understand that carrying a blade in the border army is because there is danger. However, in this place, is it because you feel like our Green One Academy's blades are inferior to the border armies, or is it because you feel that we cannot ensure your safety? After Xia Yanbing was warned by that black-haired man to not spoil them, his expression clearly became much more strict. When he saw this tall and skinny youngster collapse, Xia Yanbing's voice even more so carried a hint of mockery. The 4 of you originally had outstanding endurance amongst everyone here, but because of these burdens, you instead became the first ones to fall. Don't you feel that this is a bit foolish? The other 3 border barbarians immediately threw aside the long blades they carried, but this skinny and tall youngster instead stubbornly stood up from the ground, not abandoning anything he carried. All of the new students looked at this skinny and tall youngster with a strange expression, even the black-haired man walking at the very front turned around. He sized up this skinny and tall youngster, with an expression of someone about to deliver a beating. He said, "Youngster, what was your name again?" The tall and skinny youngster hung his head, saying, "I am Tang Ku." The black-haired man gave him a look. "Give me the reason why you won't abandon these burdens." The skinny and tall youngster's voice was shaking a bit. "This blade and this bow were both things my older brother left for me. He has already died in battle." Lin Shi's eyebrows jumped, immediately remembering this stubborn skinny and tall youngster's name. Excellent. The black-haired man's eyes released brilliance once more, also containing a bit of a crazy expression. "Loyal, unyielding, I admire these traits. I'll give you half a point." The group immediately erupted into commotion. By now, everyone knew how hard points were to come by, yet half a point was obtained just like that. Professor Qin, during this period, aside from Professor Wang who is teaching along the way, no one else has the authority to reward points. Oh, I forgot. Then forget what I just said. When we return to the academy, I'll find a reason to add half a point. Meanwhile, Xia Yanbing and the black-haired man's conversation even more so made the group of new students want to immediately fall over. Lin Shi. Mu Shanzi suddenly walked up to Lin Shi's side. Lin Shi gave him a fierce look. "What?" Mu Shanzi gritted his teeth. "Why don't we have another bet? Whichever one of us can't hold on anymore first, that person has to shout out the words I shouted before." Lin Shi laughed without any feeling of guilt. "Sure." Then, he tore off a stick of meat and threw it into his mouth, at the same time tossing a few sticks in Li Kaiyan's direction. Mu Shanzi was stupefied. Gulu gulu, his stomach continuously rumbled. That's not fair. I'm not betting. After staring blankly for a moment, he immediately turned around in dejection, leaving Lin Shi's side, full of a sense of defeat. Lin Shi laughed. Meng Bai, that little fatty really was a foodie. Inside this bag he slipped Lin Shi. Not only were there many crispy and fragrant marinated deer meat strips, there were also quite a few pastries and fresh fruits. There was even a skewer of black ice grapes Meng Bai told Lin Shi about, but he never had the chance to try yet. Ah! Right at this time, a wave of intense pain shot through his left calf, making him couldn't help but scream out in pain. His left leg also cramped. The other self-defense department new students all carried a longing for future glory in devotion to their empire, but Lin Shi, who knew what kept him going, managed to persist on. After walking for another hour or so, only when more than half of their group couldn't walk on their own anymore, did the black-haired man and Xia Yanbing have them stop and rest where they were. Don't sleep, and don't eat yet. Remove your shoes first, break the blisters on your feet with your own hair, and then smear this ointment, or else you all won't be able to walk tomorrow. Xia Yanbing started several bonfires while shouting out with a strict voice. However, no one here could immediately sleep. The unbearable pain was secondary. Apart from Lin Shi and Li Kaiyun, the others hadn't eaten anything from the afternoon until now, their stomachs empty to the point of driving them mad, sour liquid stirring in their throats. A bamboo tub carrying light green colored ointment was quickly passed to Lin Shi. Next to the bonfire, Lin Shi shook uncontrollably as the 5 blisters on his foot were punctured, while the other 6 were just like he had imagined, already broken. However, the effects of this light green ointment really were astonishing. The instant he smeared it over the blisters, an incredibly cool and refreshing feeling spread, much of the swelling of his legs even immediately eliminated. Great winds boundless, advance with spear in hand, endless heads to take, endless enemy blood to drink. In the distance, a bleak and wild singing voice could vaguely be heard. The black-haired man walked over from some shrubbery, on his back 3 yellow antelopes whose bodies were even larger than his own. Thud. Under everyone's shocked gaze, he tossed the 3 golden antelopes that were more than 3 times his size in total by the bonfire. Your performance today is still passable, but you all should still watch carefully. Starting tomorrow, the task of sorting out prey will be handed over to you all. After saying this in a de-emphasized manner, he easily cut through the antelope with a dagger, skinned it, got rid of its inner organs, and then apart from the 3 antelope heads, the remaining parts were all directly cut into chunks of palm-sized, bone-in meat. The sturdy bones, under his cuts, gave one the feeling as if they were as soft as tofu. This is at least a soul master, able to imbue soul force into a weapon. No, the Academy's professors definitely aren't only at this kind of level. Li Kaiyun couldn't help but say beside Lin Shi's ears. You all can roast the meat yourselves, right? At this time, the black-haired man already lazily said this, starting to mind his own business and roasting the antelope heads. A meat fragrance began to waft out from the bonfire. The new students whose stomachs were long rumbling like thunder from hunger immediately rushed over. The meat of these 3 antelopes was extremely fatty. Moreover, the most crucial part was that it was extremely fresh. Soon afterwards, sizzling sounds and an even richer meat fragrance began to spread through the entire camp. While Lin Shi massaged his own legs, he saw that the thin and weak young lady who was the first to fall because of her legs cramping, was sitting next to a bonfire not too far away from him. She looked like she was about to cry, making Lin Shi, who wasn't all that introverted, couldn't help but walk over, calling out and asking, "Why aren't you roasting any meat? You don't know how." That's not it. When this thin and weak young lady suddenly saw Lin Shi, who was still a stranger, suddenly speak to her, she was immediately at a loss for what to do, not even knowing what exactly to do with her hands, her expression now looking even more like she was going to cry. Ever since I was small, I couldn't eat mutton. I would always have diarrhea. Then you must be allergic to mutton. Allergic. It's nothing. Then you can have these things. Lin Shi handed the bag in his hands to this thin and weak young lady. No, that's yours. This thin and weak young lady stared blankly for a moment, and then immediately began to panic. It's fine, I actually kind of like this type of antelope meat, I can just roast some of it myself. Lin Shi smiled, pointing towards Li Kaiyun. Right now, Li Kaiyun was already turning a piece of antelope meat over the flame. Seems like you aren't that bad of a person. A voice sounded from behind Lin Shi. As soon as Lin Shi turned around, he saw that a somewhat square-faced tall young lady and a round-faced young lady with a fair complexion were looking at him. When they saw him turn around, that somewhat square-faced tall young lady nodded towards the bag he placed by the thin and weak young lady, adding, I originally thought that you were going to hog it all for yourself. Lin Shi felt like this girl was rather outspoken and straightforward. He laughed, and then before he had time to say anything, this tall young lady whose voice was a bit rougher actually introduced herself first. I'm Hua Jiyue, from North Sprout Province. My name is Wang Xiaoquan, from South Order Province. The fair-skinned, round-faced young lady next to her also nodded friendly towards Lin Shi. The thin and weak young lady was a bit flustered, saying, I'm called Bian Ling Han, from Qiantang Province. Lin Shi was about to introduce himself to these three female students, but he was cut off by Hua Jiyue. You can go and roast your meat. Heaven's choice student, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know you are Lin Shi from Deerwood Town. Chapter Volume 119. What exactly did he leave behind? You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the first glimmer of dawn, a line of individuals in black cloaks advanced through a seemingly endless and vacant tundra. Snowflakes lazily scattered about, this scene having quite a bit of artistic aesthetic. Heaven Ascension Mountain Range's great outline, after 3 whole days of arduous trekking, finally revealed its true appearance. Green Lawn Academy's location was finally within view. Green Lawn Academy's light green-colored ointment's efficacy was something none of the modern age's ointments could match. After a night's sleep, the swelling and aching of their feet would disappear without a trace, even the injuries at the soles of their feet would form scabs and peel off, becoming as good as before. It was also precisely because of this grassy-scented ointment's help that Lin Shi and all of these self-defense department new students could persist until now. After these 3 days of difficult trudging, the 40.1 new self-defense department students' faces all became a ring slimmer, but their minds were instead much sharper, every single one of them able to eat much more every meal as well. At first, most of the new students could only eat a palm-sized chunk of meat, but now, even those with the smallest appetites could pretty much eat 2 steaks of this size. Unknown whether intentionally or unintentionally, after that night, the wild and unruly-looking grave and stern black-haired male no longer hunted antelopes, instead only bringing back a type of horned elk with larger bodies. This type of elk's marbling was even better, the fragrance even stronger, adding a strong meat smell even to their black northern sea otter fur cloaks. What exactly did that middle-aged uncle leave behind in Green Lawn Academy? Lin Shi walked at the center of the group, looking into the ice. Cold and mysterious Heaven Ascension Mountain Range. Snowflakes fluttered about the upper half of the mountain, clouds and mists lingering about, distant and beyond reach. Even though he had long accepted his new identity, moreover quite content with this world, he felt an indescribable emotion. Perhaps it was because of those words he said to that old driver, the irreconcilable feeling of lonesomeness and not being understood that made that middle-aged uncle become his true reason for being so determined to enter Green Lawn Academy. Moreover, perhaps this middle-aged uncle might be able to answer many of his questions. A stone path that only allowed 2 or 3 people to walk side by side lay before them at the foot of the mountain, carrying a shallow layer of white snow as it winded upwards. Before reaching halfway up the mountain, the white snow became a hard layer of ice and fragmented icicles. The black-haired man took the lead on this stone path, extremely easygoing, as if it was no different from a normal stroll. He released a loud laugh, and then swept his eyes over Lin Shi and the others in a threatening manner. "Watch your feet. Follow this path up through this mountaintop and we're there. Before the sun sets behind the mountain today, all of you better climb your way over. Those who fail to climb over can just spend the night on this path." However, when everyone stepped on this path and raised their heads, they couldn't see the so-called mountaintop he spoke of at all. This Heaven Ascension mountain range really was too tall. After hundreds of flights of stairs, every step consumed a large amount of stamina. Later on, apart from Xia Yanbing and the black-haired man, all of the new Self-Defense Department new students really used their hands and feet. However, despite this being the case, after climbing a set distance, they had to stop to catch their breath. A wide expanse of lush, giant cedar trees suddenly appeared at the limits of the narrow icy stone path. Then, it was as if they passed through a world. When the new students who were huffing and puffing made it through these sky-shrouding giant cedar trees, they were all speechless. The level mountainside before them faced dozens of mountaintops, a continuous expanse of majestic palaces resting on them, their windows flickering under the sunlight. On the mountaintop closest to them, the palaces that were linked up together even extended beyond the summit, as if they directly reached into the skies above their heads. The light reflected off the green jade-like walls and golden glazed roof tiles made it a bit hard for these new students to open their eyes. Lin Shi was also speechless. The imagination of a modern man, when compared to the scenery before him, was still too lacking. Just this mountaintop and the majestic palaces closest to him exceeded the Lord of the Rings city of Gondor. Why is this place warm like spring, flowers in bloom, not at all a frigid and frozen world? Someone asked with a stupefied expression on his face. This is also a foolish question. The black-haired man pointed into the horizon, too lazy to explain. At the limits of their line of sight was a mountain range that reached even higher into the clouds, as if it was a massive city wall. This place was just like Four Seasons Plains, also a depression in the mountain range. The cold streams that rushed over from the north were blocked by the unbroken chain of peaks, the disturbed flow causing the cold winds to completely pass over this great mountain basin. The hundreds of great peaks, before this massive mountain range, were nothing more than protrusions from the basin. Continue climbing. The black-haired man and Xia Yanbing led these new Self-Defense Department students who were already so tired they could barely move their feet towards the mountaintop that was closest to them, as well as comparatively the lowest one, finally arriving before a giant black wooden door. "None of you ended up falling down, right?" The black-haired man raised his fist. While laughing loudly, he gave the giant black wooden door a knock. Madman Qin, after cursing in a low voice, the great gate suddenly opened. A tall, long-faced woman who was also dressed in black professor robes with silver star symbols embroidered on her chest and sleeves stood in front of the entrance. Her face was extremely stiff. The first impression she gave everyone was that this married woman was extremely strict, definitely not someone they could talk back to. "Professor Lee, it's been such a long time. How about the two of us go fight around?" The black-haired man said with a laugh towards this strict-looking, tall, long-faced married woman. This married woman gave the black-haired man a vicious glare, not paying his words any attention. She easily opened the half-meter thick giant door, at the same time saying strictly to Lin Shi and the other Self-Defense Department new students who were tired to the point of collapse, "Don't waste anything, or else you all will have to deal with me." All of the new students didn't understand what this long-faced married woman meant when she said "don't waste anything," but as soon as they passed through the wide entrance, all of them were immediately stupefied. There were more than 20 wide wooden tables across the cobblestone plaza, every single table full of food. Roasted elk chops, roasted pheasant, roasted river deer meat, rice, pastries, all types of vegetables, as well as all types of tubers and fruits not even Golden Spoon youngsters had seen before. "You all can now do as you please, as long as you all can finish all of it," the black-haired man gave this group of dumbfounded Self-Defense Department new students a profound look, saying this. "Ah! The self-defense department new students were immediately like fierce tigers who just broke out, throwing themselves at the tables piled with food. In reality, apart from hastening them on with their journey, the black-haired man didn't let them go hungry, but after going several days on roasted meat without any seasonings, it could only stave their hunger. Now, every single dish on the wooden tables before them looked extremely appetizing. All of them seized a pile of food, letting loose. Is this the welcoming banquet? If we don't wait for the other department students, will there be any problems? Someone asked, feeling some misgivings. It can be counted as one. The black-haired man who was currently taking large bites out of a piece of roasted lamb said without much thought, our self-defense department does this every year, so do you think there will be any issues? Just relax and eat. Either way, you all can't finish everything, even if you do, that Professor Lee will prepare more. The other department's people will also hurry here. Is this where we will live? Didn't you say that there is the most important tradition to come, that we have to receive Principal Zhang's advice? When will we be receiving the advice Principal Zhang left behind? Someone couldn't help but ask. There's no rush, that'll happen tomorrow at noon. You all will live in that region. The black-haired man casually pointed out. All of the new students couldn't help but follow where his finger pointed, seeing a 7-story, corner tower-like palace hall, from its position already this mountaintop's overhanging cliff. Why are there no other senior brothers and sisters? All of the new students will reside in this mountaintop. The senior brothers and sisters of different departments are all at different mountaintops, you all will have chances to meet them normally. As for which mountaintops you all will live in a year later, all of you will understand when the time comes. Are we going to wait for the other department's people to all hurry here before we receive the principal's advice? Then what do we do now? Now, it is just eating, sleeping, and waiting for them to come. You all have an extra day of rest compared to them. The black-haired man gave all of these new students another look. Otherwise, how will you all understand the concept of more effort will always bring greater returns? Professor Qin, you really are too awesome. The new students first stared blankly for a moment, and then they released loud cheers. Is that so? Under the cheers and praise, the black-haired man instead lowered his head, completely focused on chewing the roast lamb in his hands. With an inward laugh of self-mockery, he said, I just hope that there will be less of you who disappoint me in the future. The other lecturers won't be back until tomorrow as well, so all of you can only rest in this courtyard. When those from other departments arrive tomorrow, after you all receive the principal's advice, there will be lecturers who will help all of you arrange your schedules and courses. Xia Yanbing's strict voice also sounded, no one is permitted to leave this courtyard, or else you will be directly banished from Green One Academy. No one bothered wondering if this rule was too strict. This courtyard that was full of food, compared to the difficult trudging they experienced the last few days, was already heaven. Moreover, this group of self-defense department new students really was too tired. After they drank and ate their fill, even Lin Shi, who was the only one who felt a bit of regret that he couldn't immediately see what that middle-aged uncle left behind, under the softness of the cloak, entered the land of dreams, sleeping soundly. The next day, when the first self-defense department new student woke up, the sunlight was already extremely bright. The crazy black-haired man was like a javelin, standing at the top of a palace hall by the cliff, gazing into the distance, unknown just how he got up there. At the foot of Heaven Ascension Mountain Range's frozen plains, a group of people covered in black cloaks were already approaching like a swarm of black ants.